Hello, how are you? Good. As ready as I'll ever be.
I can only see the top of your head. I don't know if it's my screen, Roy, but I can't see your chin. Is it looking all right, Lawrence? Would you rather I did?
Unusual for you not to read the instructions, Gary.
How's that? I feel like I'm driving a plane now. There you go. Good to go. Good to go. Thank you, Lawrence. Yeah.
Hey everybody, how's it going? It is the Thursday, of course, financial thing stream this evening. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining. Have a very special couple of guests today in two different geographical locations. So fingers crossed, everything is going to work well technically. But we have Roy And Gary, Roy is the managing director of Folk to Folk, and Gary is the COO, Chief Operations Officer. Folk to Folk is now considered the largest retail peer-to-peer lending company in the UK with over like 650 million pounds in lending. So we're going to have a chat with them and kind of get the lowdown on Folk to Folk. So don't mix that. Quick recap of upcoming guests. May 4th. This next Thursday, we'll have the Peer-to-Peer Finance News with Susie. She is the founder of the P2P Finance News. We'll talk all things about peer-to-peer lending. May 18th, we got Capital Stackers. May 25th, Peter Reed of Assets Exchange. And Cufflink will be here at an undetermined date, not too far in the future. So just trying to get that date worked out with them. But we're going to get right into it without further ado. Yes, Harley is awake. She's pointing... slumbering well today. She's excited for this live stream. So I am too. I'm excited to learn more about Folk to Folk. So let's bring on the two main men. Here we go. Hold on. Just do the little technical. Okay. So hopefully this works. Let's bring them in. There we go. How's it going? We have here, trying to get them. See if I can get them both on screen here for you. There we go. We have Roy on the extreme right side with the checkered shirt on, and then Gary looking like the airline pilot in the middle of the screen. Thank you to you both for joining. Appreciate it. How are you doing today, this evening, rather?
Good, thank you.
That is Gary. Excellent, excellent. And tell me where you're located, because I know you're in two different places right now. So, Gary, where are you talking from?
So I am sat at home just outside the M25 at about 10 o'clock on the clock face. Okay,
so I have no idea what that is, but sounds, as long as you're not sitting inside, actually on the M25, that's a good thing.
No. I was sat on it earlier for quite a while, actually.
Roy, where are you right now? Okay, down in, Bristol. Okay, that was my old neck of the woods in school. I used to go to Clifton, Clifton College nearby where you are. So, anyway, thanks again for joining. We're going to talk all things peer-to-peer lending tonight. We got people watching on the stream. If you guys have any questions too, you'd like to ask Roy and Gary, this is a unique opportunity. It's not often that you get to have the powers that be right in front of you live to answer your questions about maybe possibly investing through them or some things you want to know about the company. So take this opportunity because you may never get it again. We don't know. Roy has been the managing director and CEO of Folk to Folk for about 7 years, and Gary has been with the company as the COO for about a year. So we're just going to get a lot of background information. So briefly, I'll start with you, Gary. What's your business background before you came onto the Folk to Folk team?
Well, I moved down from Glasgow, which is where this accent comes from, about it was the end of 87. And I've been in financial services, I think that's about 36 years, in a whole range of guises. I was with RBS for 27 of those years for an asset finance subsidiary called Lombard. And then since then, over the last 8 or 9 years, I've been operating in a sort of multifunctional sales, operations and risk type background and general leadership. As you said, I joined about a year ago.
Okay. I just, somebody's saying in the stream that we can't hear the mic. Hang on one second. I don't think it's on your end. Can somebody in the chat just let me know that you can hear Gary or Roy? Somebody give me a heads up. We'll continue if they, for some reason, can't hear it. Yes, Gary is okay. Roy, go ahead and tell us where.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us before you came to Folk. What were you doing?
I must admit, I find it hard to believe I started my banking career back in the 70s. And I must be aging well, I think. I started my life with Lloyds Bank, where I stayed for 7 years, and then thought I ought to do something a bit more exciting and joined Hill Samuel, a merchant bank, where I spent 10 years and my last role was regional senior manager down in Bristol. That's how I've ended up where I am today.
Okay.
When I left there, I joined RBS and became deputy head of risk in Royal Bank Leasing, another asset finance subsidiary of RBS, and that's where I stayed for 22 years. And my last role there was head of structured asset finance.
Okay, so you got a long history, both of you, in the financial services industry, which I think serves well. Tell me, why peer-to-peer lending, Roy? Why did you get involved in that space?
Well, I think I got involved in it by sort of mistake, really, in some ways. When I left RBS, I entered into a personal project for a year or so. And then I was wondering what to do with myself. And coincidentally, Folk to Folk had an office some 6 miles from where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
And they were advertising for a relationship manager job. And I applied for it. And I just started to believe in the ethos of the company, really. The fundamentals of it was good folk lending to good folk. And it was a company with integrity and standing peer-to-peer.
Oh, I mean, that's why not, right? I like the slogan "Good folk into good folk." That's really good. So, Gary, have you ever invested in peer-to-peer lending on a personal side of things?
I haven't actually, although having been here for a year now, I kind of see the attractions of why people would want to do that. It's hopefully we'll talk a little bit through this conversation about the construct, the risk profile, and all that sort of stuff. So I do see the attractions,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't as yet invested. I've been entirely focusing my time on helping the business to get into a position of growth. That's kind of my background, if you like, and it's why I joined. Slightly less romantic than Roy's story really is. I mean, because I've known Roy for probably 25 years, and the reason I'm at Folk to Folk is because Roy asked me to. It's as simple as that. I've known Roy for so long. I've got utmost respect for him. Obviously, I know what I'm getting into when I work with Roy, so that's why I'm at Folk to Folk. But Roy asked me to join really because we've got strong ambitions for this business. There's things that we need to continue to develop in order to support that growth. And a lot of what I've been doing over the last sort of 8 to 10 years has been helping business and leading businesses through growth phases.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I personally saw the attraction of in Folk to Folk. It wasn't so much the proposition as the opportunity to help the business to flourish.
How about you, Roy? Have you personally had any experience investing in peer-to-peer loans outside of Folk to Folk?
No, I haven't. But now I'm a firm convert.
You've drunk, as they say in America, you've drunk the Kool-Aid. You know, have you ever heard that saying? Drunk the
I have
Kool-Aid.
now.
It's a good one. So let me ask you, Roy, when did Folk to Folk issue its first loan? Because you guys are now considered to be the biggest retail lender since Assets Capital has closed its door to retail. So you guys are in the number one spot. How long has it been since Folk to Folk offered its first loan to people?
Well, it's going back to February 2013 now, where our first loan was to a local farmer who saw an opportunity to diversify by building and running a swimming pool. They've now over 900 pupils taking part in lessons each week, as well as a number of local schools. This is an example of what we term in Folk to Folk as folkonomics, which describes the knock-on impact of our lending.
Okay.
Not only did diversification help and sustain the core farming business, but it helped the local supply chains as well and created community benefit.
So it's been, I mean, you're talking about 10 years ago, so they were quite young in the pit. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And Gary, What does folk-to-folk offer that makes it different from its competitors? We have a lot of companies out there trying to get investors to come in to the business, and you have to pitch them, right? So what is it for lenders that you could say about folk-to-folk that makes them different? And what type of loans do you offer people like me and the other investors?
Well, there's a kind of a number of things I'd probably want to touch on. I think the first of them you actually touched on yourself in the introductory question, I think, because we accept retail deposits. There's the big thing, right? So we have a diversified source of funding. So we've got a lot of long-standing, loyal retail investors of a whole myriad of different types. But we're not entirely reliant. So we don't want to be entirely reliant on institutional. So whilst we do have institutional funding to a small extent, we're really baked in to retail. So we're continue to support those retail investors, and anybody who's listening to this who hasn't known much about folk-to-folk or hasn't tried folk-to-folk, I would encourage them to have a look into the website, understand a bit about the business, because it is a increasingly unique or increasingly reducing opportunity for people to invest in this type of opportunity, and we're committed to staying with that. And I think alongside that, I would say that we are, we describe our risk appetite as a sort of banking phrase, the type of business that we want to arrange lending for. We have got a very cautious approach to risk. It's in the DNA of the people within them. It's within the business, but actually ultimately it's the people in the business. I mean, Roy hasn't said it, but he's 49 years of experience. He leads the credit committee that reviews these transactions. He's got a fantastic sense of risk, as have a number of the rest of us, and I think that's a strong cornerstone of the business. So I think that's important, that people who invest understand the people that sit behind this business and the depth of experience that they've got. I think the purpose is slightly unique because we don't support large conurbations. Obviously, there are bigger institutions than us, traditional banks and bigger challenger banks, all fighting over large transactions in the middle of towns and cities. That's not us. It's not what we were set up for. It doesn't reflect on our purpose, which is really about supporting the regional economies of the UK. I think the UK government caught up with us a little bit because they weren't talking about levelling up the UK in terms of a strategy for the government 10 years ago, but we were. That's kind of why we're here. We're keen that the trickle-down economics, if you like, or the folkonomics that Roy referred to, is something that people can support by, if they're interested. Obviously, there's an income flow to this for investors, but equally there's the purpose of, do people want to support their regional businesses? And of course, this business gives them that access to it. And the other thing, a couple of other things I would say. You hear a lot about, we've got technology, we're investing in technology, that's important. But the technology we're investing in is about simplifying process and automating process. It's certainly not about automating decision making. And we will never be an algorithmic business. We don't want to be, and it's not appropriate. So we are the human face of finance. The management team has got nearly 300 years of experience. It's goes a long way towards 300 when you've got Roy with 49, right enough, but 300 years of experience is a lot. So, and the other thing I would probably say, two other things. One is we diversify. So yes, we get involved in property because property is the cornerstone security behind what we get involved in, and some of that is property development. But only 30% of what folk-to-folk gets involved in relates to property development, or either larger developments or smaller developments. 70% isn't, and that's really quite important. I think when you're going through economic challenges as the UK is, that you have diversification of the type of lending that we get involved in, and that does give investors choice. I think that choice is important for people. And then lastly, I would say, what's unique about us, we have got an extremely simple proposition. It is not difficult to get your head around what it is that we do, because we will basically lend to a business, and it has to be for a business purpose. So that could be a sole trader, a partnership, or a company. But as long as it's for any business purpose, as long as we've got the right type of security, then we'll lend to that business as long as it meets all the requirements of credit committee. It's an interest-only repayment structure on a refinancing at the end of the term, and that term can be anything between 6 months and 5 years. And the loan to value, which is the primary means of repayment, is obviously the borrower generating cash flow to make the payments to the investors. But the backstop and the secondary means of repayment, which is really important, that safety net, if you like, is that on a valuation basis, we will not lend more than 60% against the external valuation that we arrange. So it's never guaranteed. Nothing's ever guaranteed in life, right? But that's a pretty secure structure, and it's one that investors over the last 10 years have benefited from.
Okay. Well, there are actually two things that are guaranteed in life: death and taxes. So, I mean, you can't get away from those.
There you go.
I had to say that because I just paid the HMRC. So, and also follow-up question, Gary, very quickly. What's the current size? Just a little bit of statistics. What's the current size of the loan book? The average interest rate that say an investor could expect every year, and what's the average loan size of money that you lend out to borrowers?
Okay. So it's worth mentioning, I think it was only last week or maybe it was the week before, we passed the milestone, if you like. It's another milestone. It's another 100 million of lending that's supported the regional economies. We're now past 600 million since the organisation started in supporting the regional economies. The actual loan book, in terms of amount outstanding at the moment, is 221 million. The average loan sizes we're seeing, I said, I think I maybe didn't say, but we'll write transactions anywhere between £100,000 loan and roughly £10 million loan. So it's a very wide span. But as you'd expect, with smaller businesses, the weighting is towards the smaller end. So the average is 418,000 is our average loan size at the moment. And as far as the interest rates are concerned, and obviously we had a very benign environment for a very long time, and traditionally and historically the kind of fair exchange, if you like, between the investor and the investor and the borrower was 6.5%. But given obviously some of the shenanigans that we've had in the UK economy, starting really last autumn, rates have continued to grow. So now we start at 8%. But there are opportunities for some of the loans to be higher than that, potentially into double digits in terms of interest rate. Okay.
So, question. The one thing I know about you guys is you have a higher minimum investment amount. So that is £20,000 is the minimum that you have to put into a loan with folk to folk. I would say it's definitely higher than most other peer-to-peer lending companies out there. Roy, has this been an obstacle of entry for investors that you've been trying to lure into the investing through folk to folk? Has the £20,000 been an obstacle for you as a business, the minimum?
No, the entry point hasn't been an obstacle. In fact, it's quite engineered really at the outset to try and get the right sophisticated lender on board. It's important for us that our investors know the risks involved, and so the higher loan amount helps us conclude that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, either that or everybody just has more money than the rest of the people of us peons. But so you found that as to be actually a positive thing then, because you're finding that people who lend higher amounts of money tend to be just more knowledgeable with what they're getting themselves into. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we feel comfortable with. But there's nothing to say we won't lower that at some point in the future.
Okay. And
I'd probably answer that, Lawrence. I suppose okay. There is a and some of the viewers might not know, but the business is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, so clearly it's all about doing the right thing. And Roy and I obviously are well accustomed to operating in that type of environment. And recently, the Financial Conduct Authority introduced a set of principles, because they don't set rules that you follow. They set principles, and the management work out what's appropriate for the particular business they're running. So they set a set of principles that really are to make sure that investors really understand the risk profile of what they're getting involved with. So on our website, there's all sorts of warnings that need to be put out there, and obviously there's educational material. But equally, if somebody wants to become an investor, they have to go through an onboarding process, which effectively tests the level of their understanding to make sure that they're not putting in their last amount of money into something and not really understanding what they're doing, because nobody clearly wants that to happen. And this is a process that's been put in place to tighten that up. But as Roy said, when you have investors who are putting in minimums of 20,000, they come generally with a level of financial acumen and experience that means that our transition, if you like, and it's not really been much of a transition we've had to make, but our transition to ensuring compliance with these new consumer duty regulations has been an easier step for the likes of us. And that's why we are super confident about continuing to have this business supported by retail investment, rather than deciding, well, we're not going to do this retail investment anymore, we're going to move to institutional funding, right? So I think we've got a head start in that respect, compared to maybe some others. Okay.
And quite time fitting, I would say, Dave Dawson, who is one of our viewers in the stream, has asked a question that really follows up to what we have just talked about. Since the loan minimums of 20,000, obviously one of the problems in retail peer-to-peer lending is sometimes the demand for investors can be much greater than the supply of loans that are available. So too much money on the platform, loans getting snapped up very quickly.
Yeah.
Do the loans disappear quickly on the platform, Dave asks? Is that something that's an issue, or do they tend to sell out very quickly?
They do go quite quickly, because our loans are really popular, because obviously they've been through the folk-to-folk sieve, if you like. So the time they get to being made available, there's a high degree of confidence on our side that these are loans that investors should be interested in. So there's always a balancing act with making sure, a bit like interest rates in some way, making sure you get the right balance in terms of that exchange between lenders and investors. So our strategy to that is that we want to, in fact, actually, coincidentally on Tuesday, we have another front-end originator of loan activity, if you like, starting with us, and we'll be taking another one after that as well, because we see the demand. But we've always kind of got to get the balance between the two. So yes, at the moment they're going reasonably quickly, and even on our secondary market, because obviously some people want to trade out of their positions, and we have a secondary market that allows people to have that opportunity, albeit it does require somebody to step forward, obviously, and volunteer for the replacing. There's no guarantee, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's not death and taxes, to your point, Lawrence. So even in that secondary market, we're seeing quite a fast turnaround, because the loans that we're we have some challenging cases, but in the main we don't, and therefore the secondary market's moving quite quickly. Matter of days, just to give you some context.
Yeah. Roy, so folk to folk, I know one of the things that you've told me about, that you guys have 0 lender losses since 2013, so not one person has lost money on the platform in 10 years. What's the secret to keeping these defaults manageable? I mean, you're dealing in, obviously, there's risk involved. You can't pay people 9.5% target interest without there being some risk. But you seem to have a pretty good hold on keeping these defaults at a manageable level. So, Roy, what's the secret to that? How has folk to folk been able to do that?
I think the importance is our culture, and I think a loan goes wrong on day one when you credit approve it, really. So prudence up front is absolutely key. We're cautious about risk. But my background's all been in for much of my career in portfolio management, and I've always been key, particularly in the RBS days, of being ahead of the wave and making sure you're on top of your customer and you talk to them. And we have an annual review process where someone talks to us lenders every year at least, and more often if appropriate. So we continually strive to improve and keep contact with our borrowers to ensure that if there are any issues, we're fully aware of them ahead of time. You know, if someone runs into trouble, the sooner you know about it, the better the outcome generally.
Mm-hmm. And can I just add something else to that, Roy,
sure.
if you don't mind? So we have a monthly credit committee. So we'll look at things at an individual transactional level. And quite rightly, as Roy said, we have that engagement with borrowers through the term. But equally, we have a portfolio assessment on a monthly basis. So if we see trends in the data that says, well, that's a bit unusual, then we'll do a deep dive, maybe a sector, for example. We might have a deep dive into a sector, understand what the common themes are, and then we'll be constantly learning about whether there are any adaptations that are necessary in terms of front-end activity as a consequence of what we're seeing. So you can learn from what you've already got, as well as obviously looking at things at the front end.
Mm-hmm. You're like an advanced learning machine. The more experience you get with the loans.
We're just not doing it on an algorithm. Nothing quite like experience.
Not ChatGPT. Also, Gary, what is your take on how peer-to-peer lending companies tend to co-invest in loans? Is that something that you do? Some people do that. Other companies don't put their own money in it. What do you guys do when it comes to that?
Well, we don't do it as a point of policy. That's we are the arranger and the manager, so to speak. But I wouldn't say we've never invested in our loans. We've tended to do it historically where we've had excess cash, and obviously that's not very efficient to have excess cash. So on occasions we would invest on that basis, but we don't do it as a point of policy.
Okay. And also speaking of excess cash, we have obviously some issues with the thing called cash drag. I'm sure you've heard of it, where people put their money onto the platform and it's kind of sitting around not doing anything. Somebody in the chat is asking, is cash drag an issue with folk-to-folk, or is there a way for you to put the money to work? Say during the bidding process, some companies offer, you get interest when the money has been pledged. How does folk-to-folk handle that?
So we've looked into treasury type management. It's not straightforward under the regulatory rules. It's the investor's cash. So it's not straightforward to try and get some sort of treasury management structure around investors' cash when it's we've clearly got a regulatory obligation to make sure that everything reconciles to the penny. If we're kind of managing that cash on behalf of investors, so treasury management's a challenge. Cash drag, I would say it's not a substantial issue that we have, but we are about to launch in the next 2 to 3 weeks a beta version of our investor portal. We've been working on this for like all technology, it's taken a little bit longer than we would have originally imagined because things never go to plan. The regulator came in with some adjustments to the consumer duty that I was referring to earlier, which meant we had to go back and revisit some things. But in any event, within a short number of weeks, we'll be launching an investor portal, and that's really all about self-serve. So I think where investors will have the power to manage their own cash drag, if you like. So if there's a need for people to get that cash back, they'll be able to self-serve in that respect, and I think that's right that we do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Roy, and I'm going to ask you both this question because I think it's a really, really important one. For people that are new to peer-to-peer lending, obviously there's risk involved. So can you just sort of briefly explain what are the risks that people should know about when they invest through folk-to-folk loans?
Yeah, I think you've got to start off as the starting point is you can lose your return and your capital. But what we're all about is mitigating that risk to make it as safe as we can to achieve that return. And as has already been mentioned, all our loans are secured against property, and our maximum loan to value is 60% currently.
Okay.
And even on our development loans, we never look at gross development value, which is a forward-looking value of the completed site, which many lenders do. We will only ever lend on the value at the point in time we lend the money.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you had situations where you've had to actually liquidate property that's backing a loan to repay investors, or what's the experience been with that, and what's that been like?
Yes, we have, and that's probably been more prevalent over the last year or two. We've needed to appoint Law of Property Act receivers, which have taken control of the property. But to date, all our receiverships have resulted in full recovery of capital and interest.
That's pretty impressive, because not everybody can say that. Gary, do you have anything to add to the risk side of what people should know? What the risks are with folk to folk?
I would. How about anything to add? I don't think so. I think it's about there's only two things really. I mean, there's more than two things, but fundamentally there's two things that matter. One is serviceability, and we have obviously a lot of work that we look into in terms of debt service cover analysis and income streams and sensitivity, and if energy cost doubles, what does that mean to the ability of the customer to repay? So there's in the background there's a lot of analysis that goes on to make sure that something is affordable. That's really important, because that's good for the borrower, it's good for the investor, and it's good for us, because obviously if everything goes according to plan, we don't have to do an awful lot of work, and the investor gets the return that they were looking for. So there's that element, and then the secondary bit that Roy's touched on, which is the secondary means of repayment, and it's a pretty conservative approach. We talk to valuers on a regular basis, obviously, to understand what's going on. We had one attend the board not so long ago talking about, these things are all opinions, right? But, the consensus was, certain sectors were more challenging. Clearly, those with, discretionary expenditure are going to be more challenged, self-evidently. So if we see things which are in those sorts of sectors, a bit more cautious. And that's why we apply sort of sensitivities to these analysis. But fundamentally, I think the valuer's view was that, as a kind of overarching view, was property prices in the commercial space might come off, depending on if it's niche or not, but it might come off broadly about 10% was the view at the time. That could be right, it could be wrong, but it's quite a long way away from 40%, which is the difference between the loan and the security. So it's not a guarantee, but we're constantly looking at these things to make sure that we don't need to make any adjustments to what we're doing.
Okay. Peter Vince is in Leatherhead, and he asked, do you guys have a secondary market to be able to sell loans, and is there a fee to do so?
Yes, we do. Gary's already alluded to that, and there is a listing fee of £250.
Okay, so and does that work in chunk? Like, can you decide how much of that 20K loan piece you could put up for sale, or does it have to be the whole thing?
No, it has to be the whole 20.
The whole shebang.
Which is the investable amount, yeah. Okay.
Of course, some people, Lawrence, clearly do invest more than 20. That's the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are investing significantly more. 20 is the de minimis. Just to make the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Gary, what's the single biggest challenge that you're facing right now, if it's folk to folk?
And it can't be me.
Well, I would say the biggest challenge, part of the reason why we're on this call is to try and address one of the biggest challenges, which is about consumer understanding. Because I touched on the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, earlier, and these new consumer duty rules, and there's also some aligned parallel financial promotions rules. That's why you see these health warnings on our website. Now, one of the challenges are that the Financial Conduct Authority are not an expert in any particular niche of financial services. Right? That's not what they hold themselves out to be. They work on principles for that reason, because they can get into the detail. Now, we're bucketed as an industry, peer-to-peer, with the likes of cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency, I think I'm a reasonably, I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, but I'm not stupid either. And I've had somebody try to explain to me Bitcoin, for example, about 5 times. One of my relatives who actually invests in it, who tries to explain it to me, and I'm like, nope, you've explained it 5 times, I'm still not getting it. Can you try again? Because my son wanted me to buy him a Bitcoin, and I said, you never invest in anything you don't understand. That's a really important principle I've got.
Good point.
And I didn't understand it. Now, the fact that we're bucketed with cryptocurrency as an industry, frankly, is a challenge, because it might be in the same bucket, but my goodness me, that's a very wide bucket, right? So I think crypto's at one side of the bucket and we're at the other side of this very wide bucket. So one of the challenges we've got is about explaining the risk profile of what we represent, because hopefully the themes that are coming through in this call are, we're very experienced, we've got a low risk appetite, we do a lot of diligence up front, we do good portfolio management in life. Borrowers should have, things can happen, but certainly on day one, it looks like borrowers have got good serviceability, and failing an unforeseen set of circumstances, we've got a good safety net sitting underneath these structures. That doesn't feel like cryptocurrency to me. If I understood it, I could probably be more confident about the fact that it's not like crypto. So that, I would say, is one of our biggest challenges, because we're fully property secured, 60% LTV, we've got a great track record, but sometimes we struggle to get that message over to an audience, which, as I say, is part of the reason why we are here today. So that, I would say that was probably, that's probably amongst one of our biggest challenges.
Okay. Speaking as a business, and by the way, everybody who's watching, please go ahead and just give us a thumbs up. Roy and Gary have graciously given their time today. They're very busy characters. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, but hit that thumbs up and show them that you appreciate them being here today. Is folk-to-folk a profitable business? One of the biggest problems in peer-to-peer, a lot of companies running in the red constantly for years. They end up closing their doors or selling out. How is folk-to-folk in that regard?
So I'll take that one, Roy, if you don't mind. So
Yep.
I'm Scottish, so that comes with a reputation.
What are you saying?
The business is in Cornwall, and I understand there's Cornish tartan, right? So that makes them almost Scottish. So Scotsmen are very careful. I always call it being careful with your money, cautious with your money, and it's all about having good cost control in a business. And we've had consistent profits since like 2019. Obviously, in the earlier days, as we're setting up and growing, we didn't. But I think we are now at a place where we are confident that we'll consistently produce good profits. And of course, the ambition is that we generate greater profits in future, because it's all about making sure that our proposition is made available to more and more people. And of course, if more and more people are attracted to the proposition that we offer, then of course, we'll be a beneficiary of that, if you like. Certainly, we will remain profitable for absolutely the foreseeable. And that's allowed us, of course, to invest significantly in the business. We've invested significantly in technology over the last couple of years, and we'll continue to do that. I talked about a beta version of a portal, and the reason it's a beta version is because we already have plans to do further development. But equally, we want our investors to support us and giving us that feedback around, because they're the users of the portal, right? So it's important we have that circle of communication, because we intend to continue to invest in it.
Roy, we've had obviously a lot of failures in the peer-to-peer world. You've been in the game for a while. Company's been around since 2013. You've seen the failures, the lendies, the collateral in court right now, fraudulent activity going on. Investors are a little bit gun-shy about putting their money into companies, and quite rightly so. So what advice do you have for investors that are looking for reputable peer-to-peer platforms to put their money to work?
Yeah, I think the starting point is before you start looking at investment opportunities or investment products, what you need to look at is the platform itself. And I think we've touched on a number of points, but I'll just run over them again if I may. I think you need to look at the people behind the business and what their background and reputation is. Do they have the right expertise? You know, as already mentioned, our senior management team have 299 years of experience. You know, let's look at the longevity of the business and the history of defaults and losses. And I think a key thing is who are the investors? So many platforms now are looking to fund their loans by institutional means, and that's important because institutions can pull out, and the retail funding market is far more stable. Mm-hmm. Obviously not as large, but it's an important factor. The fact is, are they regulated by the FCA? And that has come up a few times this evening already. Is there security available? As we mentioned, our loans are all secured, and some peer-to-peer loans are not. And I think the important thing as well is, are they transparent? Do you get easy answers to your questions? And I think if you cover all those points off, that's a pretty good starting point to make your own judgment as to whether you want to invest.
Okay. And Gary, what do you think of the general peer-to-peer market right now as it stands in the UK? We've seen some contraction in the industry. I would say growth-wise, not very much growth in the last couple of years as far as new companies coming to market. What's your view on the sector, and how do you think it's going to proceed?
Yeah, well, it's certainly it's a lot smaller than it was, for sure, for the reasons we've articulated about a move to institutional backing, if you like, and it might get smaller still. There might be some consolidation, and there may be other platforms that choose to close from retail, which we, as I said earlier, certainly are not going to be doing that. And I think having a diversified, and we do have the institutional facility I referred to earlier, I think having diversified sources of funding, I think is a key strength for us. And we are going to continue to want to expand on both fronts. We want to attract more retail investors. That's again part of the reason why we're here. We want to bring more people to the fold, and I'll be leading the charge, if you like, in terms of building those medium-term conversations with institutions, because we do have good growth ambitions, and those growth ambitions may require some additional institutional money, but we're never going to be reliant on it. We won't go down that road.
Okay. And Roy, do you think there's some good businesses aside of folk-to-folk operating within the peer-to-peer lending space? And I'm going to throw it out there. Would you care to say, hey, I think this company is doing a good job? Of course,
folk-to-folk.
Just an opinion, of course, not financial advice, but we always ask for opinions.
Sorry, I've got to be a bit of a chicken here. I can't really comment upon other players in the marketplace, but I'm sure there are a number of good companies, and it's important for us to have strength in the market. I think it's worth outlining that, particularly during COVID, we play an important part in the economy. There were lots of people during COVID that weren't lending money, and we were there continuing to support businesses, which we did successfully. Mm-hmm. And we had our most successful year to date during that period. So it's important that we have a strong and vibrant peer-to-peer market.
Okay. So you don't want to throw any names out there. If you had to pick one stock to buy for the rest of your life, what would it be? I totally threw that upon you. So
Probably Disney.
okay, Disney. Huh? Oh, because you were just there.
He's
at
just
Disney.
been.
He saw the.
He wants a discount the next time he goes,
They
Lawrence.
know
That's
how
what it
to
is.
take money.
That's cool.
Shareholder discount.
We have a couple of questions here that people have thrown out, so I'll just ask them to you because they're, I think, pretty good questions. John Day is here. I'm trying to remember. We have a lot of regulars on the stream who come from different places, and I'm trying to remember where John is, but it's slipping my mind over there. He said, what percent mix of investments does folk to folk have? And then another question, what percentage of loans are property development? So you mentioned 30%, I think, property development.
It's split roughly half and half between what we'd call smaller developments and larger developments. And that's a slightly vague distinction, but we do draw a distinction between them. And they're about 14% and 16% respectively. So 70% isn't. Some of the larger sectors that a number of them, but the larger ones are agriculture is a large one because, of course, the history of the business started in the southwest and Cornwall, so there's a legacy there, and we've got a reasonably significant amount in hospitality, retail, and leisure. Obviously, slightly more cautious for the reasons I talked about earlier around discretionary spend, and then the rest are in smaller quantums, if you like. So the main four, if you like, small development, large development, agriculture, hospitality, retail, leisure, are probably making up about sort of 70-80% between them, if you like. And then from a sector perspective, as I said, we're around the UK. At one point we had 100% in the southwest region. Now we're down to 56% in the southwest region, and that's not because we're writing less business, of course. It's because we're writing a lot more elsewhere, faster than we are in the southwest. And we want that to continue because we're a national player. We support Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, albeit Northern Ireland is slightly selective. We're national, and hopefully the sector split helps.
So loans that are not actually property development loans, what kind of securities do you take to back those non-property development loans? Are you taking actually property as a security even on it?
Yeah. There's this fundamental cornerstone of what we do. Commercial property and or land are the two security prerequisites. First charge, and otherwise it's not for us.
Okay. Annabelle Nyron is here. She's usually in sunny Spain, so I presume she's over there. She said, do you take lenders from overseas, Europe specifically, or do they have to be just UK?
Unfortunately, we don't. It's UK based only.
So no love for the Europeans. That. Sorry, Annabelle. I think Annabelle's
I'm sorry for the 43 degrees, by the way, if you're in Spain.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's been on the news. It's the opposite end of the spectrum from wet and windy UK.
That's really hot, 43 degrees. God.
It's pretty warm.
Pretty warm. Let's see, one other question. What is the number of loans put out per month approximately? Does it vary a lot? So do you know how many roughly you tend to put up on the platform?
It does vary, but ranges between 20 and 30.
Wow, so you're putting between 20 and 30 new loans per month, is that right?
Yep.
Oh, God, you guys are busy. Where do you find all of these loans from, by the way? That's quite a lot of loans. Are they coming through brokers or?
Predominantly brokers, but because of the time we've been operating, we've got a lot of repeat borrowers.
So they come back to you over and over.
So building relationships is important to us, both with borrowers and investors.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add about folk to folk? I mean, we covered a lot here. Again, thank you for everybody tuning in tonight. I think it's been super good. Do you have anything else that you want to touch upon that we haven't discussed? Anything about the platform?
Well, I think a key thing is we're always available on the phone. If anybody wants to ring me up or Gary to talk through any lingering concerns they may have or questions they want answered, we're always available.
Okay, and you can find that contact information on the website?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And that's, by the way, the website to anybody who wants to go check it out. I'll just put it up on the screen here. Folk, and the number 2, folk.com. Really easy to remember. And there's a nice picture of a smiley egg on the front. I just saw that.
It is ISA time.
That's cool. I like that. It's got one of those little egg cozies. Yeah, and also if you're looking to borrow money on the borrowing side, you can also reach out to Folk and see if you guys can work together. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining. I know I've been trying to get you on for a while, so this is absolutely amazing that you agreed to come and do this. So hopefully we'll have you back on in the future. So we can kind of get an update on how Folk is doing. You're welcome on the stream anytime. You have the golden key, the Willy Wonka golden ticket to come on. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll keep an eye on what Folk is up to. And best of luck in the business to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Enjoyed it, Lawrence. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Oh, there you have it. Folk, folks. That's a lot of folks. I thought it was cool. Obviously, the £20,000 minimum investment part is going to be a little bit off-putting to most people, I would imagine, unless your last name ends in Wellington. But, for those of you who have the financial ability to go into that higher net worth of lending, I think Folk is definitely worth a look. I mean, they've got a ton of experience on the lending side. Again, they don't pay to come on here. This is not anything paid. This is just pure curiosity and the want to bring you information about these options that exist out there. So this seems like they have a lot of experience on the lending side, which is what we look for when we're looking for investments. Let's look at the team very quickly. There you go. There's Gary and Roy, MD, COO, and then you have a sales team. You've got relationship managers. You've got credit people, head of risk. So they've got a bunch of folk working over there who have a lot of experience. So go check them out. Anyway, I do not personally invest through Folk loans. So just FYI for transparency reasons. But hope you guys enjoyed it. And come back next Thursday. We're having a good chat with Susie from Peer-to-Peer Finance News, which, I refer a lot to the website about peer-to-peer news because they are the leading place to get information from. So we're going to have her here, all being well, next Thursday, 7:30 p.m. UK time. Again, I'll be taking probably from the second week of June off until early July, going on the old holidays, so forgive me for that, but that is what it is. We're going to say goodbye to Harley, who's having a nice snooze, and again, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much for joining. We will see you next time. Thanks for joining. Take care. Bye.